Hello, my name is Alex Tao. I'm a co-president of the Reach of Central Florida for the 2020-21 term, and today we'll be discussing the AAHC Scholarship, tips and tricks, and the basics on how to apply for the scholarship. So what is the AAHC Scholarship? Well, it's an annual scholarship for Asian American students in the Central Florida region given by the Asian American Heritage Council of Central Florida. The AAHC Foundation has done this for the last 25 years, and there are three distinct categories. Today we'll be focusing on the academic and community service aspects, and also the essay portion of the scholarship. Each year it's held around mid-November at the Orlando Public Library. However, this year it is subject to change as the coronavirus issue has led to certain restrictions on how many people can be gathered in a building. So the application opens each year around August and closes in October. Last year's forms can be found at the link listed down below. And I'll be referencing this document throughout my presentation. This year, the application might open at a different time, and there might be a different time period for you to be able to fill it out, as there are a lot of uncertainties. However, the time that you get to fill it out should be still around the same. It's around 2 months, 2.5 months. So the scholarship wouldn't be possible without the sponsors. So we'd just like to thank the sponsors for a brief moment here. These are some of the sponsors that help make the scholarship possible. So for 2020, things are still very uncertain, but AAHC has made it clear that they plan to make available the scholarship opportunity this year. We don't know when the application will drop, but as of right now, they want to keep this thing going. So category 1 is the Scholastic, and the majority of you who are watching this video are probably in high school. There are 4 awards for each of the grade levels. So, if you have a younger brother or sister that's in middle school or elementary school, they can also apply. There are 3 awards for each grade level in that category. And it's important to note that the applications that you do for the current year are based on your statistics, your activities, your grades of the previous year. So if I was currently in 9th grade and I was applying, I'd be applying for my 8th grade year because all those activities and stuff were already completed. With regard to awarding, if there are only 4 applicants in a category, then you're pretty much guaranteed to win something. And I mean, if there were only 3 applicants in that category, it'd be an even better guarantee if you were a high schooler. So that happens in some grade levels where there are less people applying. So that's why we encourage reach officers and those who are involved with the member organizations of AAHC to apply for the scholarship. Qualifications: you must be of Asian descent, of the following counties, and you must have completed one of the following grade levels. We already discussed that. You must be sponsored by a council member. This is very important. There are a couple organizations such as REACH and OCPA that are council members of the AAHC. And if you aren't affiliated with one of those, then your application will be rendered useless. So you must be signed on with one of them, and Form B will cover that sponsorship. So you must have an unweighted GPA of 3.3 or above. And so the judging criteria will, like we mentioned, contain the documentation and grades for the prior year. It contains stuff regarding scholastic achievement, so that's going to be verified via your transcript. Asian and local community involvement, extracurriculars, and awards. And they all must have occurred in a specified year-long period, usually between August of the prior year to the August of the current year. So time requirement, we discussed last slide, and they usually have some sort of note as seen on the screen where the activities have to have occurred during a certain time. But more importantly, we see the second little bullet point here must be supported. Your stuff must be supported by official documentation, and that's the key to the whole application. If you fail to do so, if you fail to support your activities and stuff that you've listed, it could cost you the scholarship. Forms A and B, your general application, where you list your address, contact, sponsoring organization, and other information. That one's pretty straightforward. Form B is your sponsorship form. This is very important. You must be sponsored by a valid organization. I mentioned REACH and OCPA. And it only requires a sponsorship signature from a president or chair of the organization. So Miss Pauline or Gia and I, if you're a REACH officer, are more than happy to sign off your forms if you need a sponsoring organization. Form C would be all your extracurriculars, your awards, and your leadership, your community involvement. So you list these things. And for the Asian American community involvement, I found it pretty easy last year, especially if you're involved with REACH. It's pretty straightforward. You can fill out probably almost all the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, since we participate in many events. So dragon boating with charge would count as one event category, would count as one activity, and so on and so forth. We have many volunteering opportunities throughout a year period that can help you fill that out. You should list your contact official. So for REACH, you probably list Miss Pauline. And for your other clubs and stuff, you would list your sponsoring teacher. Your transcript is probably the most important part of your entire application. I will share a personal lesson that I learned when I applied my freshman year. I forgot to send in a sealed transcript, and as a result, my entire application was invalidated. So that was a very harsh lesson that I had to learn, and it would be very unfortunate if any of you had to go through that. So you have to make sure that you have a sealed transcript stamped with the watermark from your school, and you can get that from your guidance counselor or whoever's in charge of printing your transcripts at your school. Documentation is very important, and we'll discuss that in the following slides. All your activities must be documented and supported with official letters. I find it very validating, or I find that having a letterhead for your official letters is probably one of the most formal ways that you can have official documentation. And we'll discuss those. We'll show you some of those examples in the following slides. So this is one of my documentation for one of my clubs last year that I included in my application. And it doesn't have to be this long. This particular teacher just decided to include a couple of recommendation sentences, but all the document has to discuss is your involvement in the activity, maybe some specifics like the amount of hours you volunteered, and it has to have the sponsor's original signature, which means that they can't just type their name out or anything. They can scan in their signature. That works. A lot of mine were scan-ins. And it might be a little weird for you to ask maybe your teacher from last year to get your thing done. So I usually settled with writing or discussing, listing out the majority of the things that I wanted them to write down, or like the things that I wanted to get officially documented. So I spared those sponsors the trouble of writing those things down. So if you make things easier for them, then it might be less awkward and more likely for them to like help you with whatever you need documented. So this is my second example, and it's from REACH. So I listed in the table my involvement, and you can see the board meetings I put down, and I listed the amount of hours, and Miss Pauline scanned her signature into the paper, which worked out really good. And I would recommend that if you are in REACH, you follow something like this, a format that is similar to this. So for the third documentation, this is a shorter one for an award. It doesn't really have to, your documentations don't have to be that long. And this is a good example of that. So for your awards, you probably don't want to ship them, all your trophies. They probably don't want to see that. And you need official signatures that come along with them. And a lot of the times it might not be that easy to get those signatures. So I think one example that a lot of you guys might be able to use would be the AP Scholar Award that College Board gives out. So if you have taken more than 3 exams throughout your high school career, then you'll be given this award. and you can find that on your College Board account. But for other competitions, so for math competitions, if you were running a 5K or running a track event, if you got awards there, then it might be hard for you to get documentation for it. But you have to try your best. And I personally went to, I guess, the second best source. If you can't, if under all circumstances you can't get access, you can't get contact with the tournament or competition sponsor, then I would go with maybe your coach or the teacher affiliated with the competition, the one that is running your club or team at school. So for mailing and ceremony, you must be present at the award ceremony, but that would be under normal circumstances. And this year's case, that's probably going to be different. But usually you would have to be present at the award ceremony. And usually you'd have to have your information in your application sent and postmarked by around early October. That might be different this time, but I'm expecting their organization to still require some sort of mail in for your application. So it must be mailed by this time, and being postmarked by that date means that if I were to send the application at October 7th, 5:55, 6 o'clock is usually when most post offices close. But if I were to do that, then my application would still be valid. Now, that's not saying I'm encouraging people to procrastinate the application to that time, but your application would still be valid if you were to send it on the day of. As long as it is postmarked, you're fine. So the last category, after you finish all your general application, this one isn't necessary. If you only want to apply for the academic scholarship, then that is okay. The category 3 would be your essay, and that's a 500-word essay, typically. Well, for the last 2 years, it was 500 words. And the qualifications you would have to just be in high school, applicants who are in high school. And these are the last 2 years prompts for the scholarship. And I'll show you an example, my example response from last year. So I'm expecting this year to maybe follow along the lines of the topic that they've been discussing. So probably something with Asian Americans and American society. And with regard to the whole COVID situation right now, there are a lot of interesting things that one can talk about. Okay, so as a reach officer, if you're watching this video, you might be expected to show up half an hour prior to help set up. On the day of the ceremony, like we mentioned, you or a representative must be present. So if you don't want to go, then make sure to send your parent there, because if you aren't there to claim it, then there might be problems. The award money per grade level is variable. So they can only state that the maximum prize is $1,000 for the 12th grade first place. Everything scales down from there, and the prize increases with grade level, and it increases with placement. So it scales down from 1,000. If you haven't applied to scholarships before, the AAHC Scholarship is a great place to start, and it can help you with your future college apps, your future scholarship applications. So thank you for your time. Email us at reachocf@gmail.com if you have any questions. Check out our Instagram and our other social media. We have awesome blog posts on there thanks to our communication team. We hope to see you in November. Remember your cultural attire.